Welcome to La Gazette. Today we'll dive into the world of ELSA Schiaparelli. You might not be familiar with the name, but in the 30s, her fame was comparable to that of Mademoiselle Chanel herself. Their rivalry and dislike for each other was well known. Both were women designers in Paris, both catering to the same stylish clientele, but each with an aesthetic that was diametrically opposed from the other. But how did Schiaparelli become an icon? And what's up with her namesake brand today? Keep watching to find out. No olvides que tenemos subtítulos en español.
Et nous vous rappelons que nous avons également des sous-titres en français. Elsa was born in Rome, in an aristocratic and very academic family. She moved to London, where she met Wilhelm Friedrich Wendt de Curler, a fortune teller and charismatic charlatan with whom she got engaged the day after their first meeting. A year after, they got deported as fortune-telling was illegal at the time. They arrived at New York soon after, and he tried to gain renown as a paranormal psychologist. After the couple had their first child, the curler left Elsa.
She found support with her friend Gaby Buffet-Picabia, wife of surrealist artist Francis Picabia, who introduced her to the circle of dada and surrealist artists in New York at the time, with whom Elsa had an instant affinity. Soon after, they all moved back to Paris, and that's when Elsa met her mentor, the great Paul Poiret. He had been the most revolutionary designer of the first decade of the century, getting rid of corsets and creating the first evening jumpsuit for women.
Schiaparelli began making clothes for herself. With no technical training, she would just drape and construct on the go, and let her inspirations take the reins. In 1927, she had a hit with her trompe-l'œil designs, the most famous of which was a sweater with a bow print. Her business began to take off and her designs pour le sport were a success. She famously designed the divided skirt, worn by tennis player Lily de Álvarez. It was so controversial, the Daily Mail suggested that she should be soundly beaten. It wasn't until 1931, when she introduced evening wear to her collections, that she began to shine. She opened her Schiap shop at 21 Place Vendôme, next door to the Ritz, and a stone throws away from Chanel at Rue Cambon. Her designs, full of humor and fantasy, came at a time of post-war depression and were the cheering up everyone needed. Her friendship with the surreal artists of the time resulted in fantastic collaborations, such as the design of these embroideries by Jean Cocteau.
Her most frequent collaborator was no doubt Dalí, and their work together resulted in some of Schiaparelli's most iconic designs, such as the lobster dress, seen here on Wally Simpson, the skeleton dress, the tear dress, and the iconic shoe hat, which Dalí sketched after balancing a stiletto on his wife's head. Dalí also represented Elsa's clothes in his paintings. No doubt it was all of these eccentric pieces which made Chanel call her that Italian artist who makes clothes.
Schiaparelli was also a fashion revolutionary. Among her innovations, we found the use of zippers on women's dresses, which she sometimes wouldn't hide and would instead make them into a part of the design.
She also developed the wrap dress, which would be later popularized by Diane von Furstenberg in the 70s. She experimented with new materials, such as plastic, notably on the so-called glass cape of 1934, and the surrealist Bugs necklace from 1938.
She also created the newspaper print fabric, which made a comeback we all remember from this iconic Dior dress, worn by Carrie on Sex and the City, and she was the first to use shoulder pads on women's suits, calling it hard chic, the precursor of the 80s power suit. On top of her couture, Schiaparelli launched several perfumes, but her most successful one was Shocking, which came in a bottle sculpted by Argentinian artist Leonardo Fini and was inspired by the curves of Mae West. Shocking was also the shade of pink which became her signature color, present everywhere from in her label to her boutique.
Her boldness made her the first fashion designer to grace the cover of Time, The magazine not only calls her a genius, but more daring and original than all of her contemporaries. After the war, however, fashion tastes had evolved, especially thanks to Dior's new look, which was a rejection of all styles pre-war. Schiaparelli stopped her couture collections on 1951 and closed her brand in 1954, the same year that her greatest rival, Coco Chanel, made her triumphant return to fashion.
Schiaparelli's legacy was unknown by the new generation of fashion enthusiasts until 2012, when Elsa and Miuccia shared the top billing in the Met's Costume Institute exhibition, Schiaparelli and Prada: Impossible Conversations.
It celebrates two extraordinary Italian women, female designers, who have many things in common, but most of all they both believe in breaking the rules of fashion, which is obviously something I believe in too.
And here are some of Miuccia and Elsa's imagined conversations for this exhibition.
This passion for new beauty. I want to really try to understand what is beauty and what is a possible beauty today.
Yes, I have taken from all around me cellophane, bag, glass. Refuse the definition of glamour without ever being any less glamorous.
On January 2014, the brand presented its first haute couture show of the new era. Creative director Marco Zanini worked on the collections until last year.
On April 2019, the Texan Daniel Roseberry was appointed artistic director. He spent the previous 10 years working alongside the avant-garde designer Tom Brown and was ready to carry on expanding Schiaparelli's universe. We had the privilege of getting invited to two of the latest presentations of the brand to discover the latest creations of Roseberry at the helm of Schiaparelli.
Schiaparelli is this incredibly magical world where everything feels possible. It was really a house about ideas before a house about making beautiful clothes, pushing the boundaries of fashion, and doing things that felt interesting, not just beautiful.
We hope you enjoyed this dive into the world of one of the greatest fashion icons of the 20th century. Hit subscribe so you don't miss our next videos, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more fashion. Thanks for watching! See you soon!